Okay, guys, in the last video, and I promised that's the last video of this section, we are going to talk about some more examples using zero factor property. Okay, so in these couple of examples, we actually going to see that sometimes we would need to factor out the greatest common factor, or GCF, first before we start factoring and then using our zero factor property. So in this example, you have 4x squared minus 4x minus 8 equals 0. We're trying to solve, right? So entering that on a Desmos graphing calculator, we can see what the solutions are going to be. So I can see that it looks like I have two x-intercepts, -1 and also +2. Those are the solutions, right? But well, how do I solve? Okay, so before you do any solving, let's go ahead and use our magic calculator. So I'm going to quit out of this menu by pressing second and then mode. I'm going to click on the table and erase what I have by pressing clear. Then I'm going to put 4x squared, then minus 4x minus 8. So once I enter that, I will just go ahead and click OK. You can always scroll up and down, so it doesn't really matter where you start. You can just keep scrolling. What you're looking for is when is this thing equal 0. So looking at the y equals 0, not the x, the y. So I can see I already hit a 0, and that happens when x equals 2. So I already know that one answer is going to be x equals 2. Well, let's see if I can keep going and maybe hit another 0. Oh, yes. So I've got another one, and that happens when x equals -1, right? So the calculator already told me what the answer is. Like, I don't even have to do anything else. But of course, on the test, you are told, okay, you have to show work, you have to show me you know how to factor. So let's go ahead and do that. So notice that there is a GCF here, so you should always factor GCF first if it's not just 1. If it's 1, then there's nothing to talk about. But here I do have 4 and a 4 and an 8, and I notice that 4, 4, and 8 are divisible by 4. So 4, it can be factored out. So if I factor 4 out, I have to figure out what's left. So if I take out the 4 from 4x squared, what's left is x squared. If I take out the 4 from 4x, what's left is x. If I take out the 4 from 8, remember when you take it out, you divide. You are not subtract. So 8 divided by 4 is 2. Okay, so then that whole thing is equal 0. Now, when you did that, the 4 right here in the front is not needed anymore, because a number multiplied by something, the only way for that to be 0 is if this something is 0. So 4 is never going to be 0. So the only way for this to work is really when x squared minus x minus 2 equals 0. That's the only possibility. So 4 you can kind of discard and you don't care about it. Okay. Now you got a factor here. Notice how x does not have a number in the front, but I can always insert a 1. So what I'm looking for, I'm going to create my table with the pairs of numbers. And here I will have a sum, and here I will have a product, right? And they should always multiply to that single number over here and add to this number right here, right? So I know that the product should be -2. I don't think there's going to be this many possibilities, right? So product of two numbers is negative. That means one of them is negative. So it could be 1, -2. But if I add them, I get -1. Ooh, wait a second. That actually already worked. Yeah, because that's -1. Wow, I got really lucky here. My first combination already worked, so I don't have to do anything. Isn't that great? That works because the product is -2 and the sum is -1. Okay, well done. That was easy. So now, factoring is something like this. So you put x, right? And you make it equal 0, and then you have the 1, so that's +1, and then there's this -2. And you could ask, okay, why is this +1 and -2 when the answer was actually -1 and +2? Well, that's because you haven't used zero factor property yet, because now you can separate these into two. X plus 1 equals 0 and x minus 2 equals 0. And you're supposed to solve each one. So here I would subtract 1 from both sides. That's how how I get the -1, which by the way matches what the calculator gave me, and add a 2 to both sides. That gives me 2, also matches with what the calculator gives me, so that problem is done. So looking at another problem here, 3x squared minus 75 equals 0. I would like to see if there is a GCF I can factor first. Now, it turns out that 75 actually is divisible by 3. If you don't believe me, just go ahead and use your calculator. 75 divided by 3 is 25. And so you can factor 3 out first. So if I take out 3 first, from the first term, 3x squared, 3 is gone, so x squared is left, minus, well, what is left from 35 when you take out 3? Again, taking out does not mean subtract, it's divide. 75 divided by 3, I just showed you on the calculator that that's 25. Now, if you've already been factoring for a while, you should recognize this as a difference of squares. So why is it a difference of squares? Because x squared is a square root of x, and 25 is a square root of 5. So you have a formula that allows you to factor difference of squares, which we already talked about, which is a minus b multiplied by a plus b, right? And so a in this case is x, and b is 5 because 25 is squared of 5. So you're going to get x minus 5, x plus 5, and you make that equal 0. Again, the number in the front makes no difference on the answer, no difference, because when you multiply by 3, that is not going to change the fact that you are 0 or not, right? So 3 is not going to produce a 0, so that cannot be 0. So the only way for this whole expression to be 0 is if the first term is 0 or the second term is 0. And so what will happen here is that I would get, when I add 5, I would get x equals 5, and when I subtract 5 from the second equation, I get x equals -5. So I think these are my answers, but I am wondering, did I do that right or not? Well, calculator to the rescue, right? We can go ahead and do that. So let's go to table. Let's check this out. So I'm going to put 3x squared minus 75. And I will look that up in the calculator. And I'm looking for zeros. Oops, I got one right here. That happened at -5. I know that's right. And then I'm also going to get a 0 at +5. So I am done. I verified my answer.